Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm out right now on the beautiful, beautiful prairie. This is one of my favorite landscapes to come out and visit. It's been a couple of years since I've been out here, but like I said, it's absolutely one of my favorite landscapes to visit. I don't make it out here often, not nearly as often as I would like to, just because it's so far away from my home base. It takes a while just to even get out here. And then once you're out here, it is just so big. There is so much area to explore. I don't know if you can hear all the birds right now. It's getting a little bit windy, so you might not be able to hear them, but there's so many birds out here, and you're constantly just hearing this beautiful bird song out here. You might be able to see some of the flowers starting to pop up, and that's one of the things that I just love about the prairie is there's so many varieties of wildflowers that come up and all the wildlife out here. And that's what I'm out here to hopefully photograph, is the scenery and the wildlife out here. I'm specifically looking for swift foxes. Swift foxes are a species of fox that I have photographed before, but again, because this area is so far away from where I live, I don't make it out here often to look for them. So I will be out here backpacking around for the next few days to hopefully be able to find some foxes to photograph and be able to learn the landscape a little bit better, familiarize myself with this beautiful landscape. For the most part, the prairie is just wide open expanses. You know, there are areas like this where you get a couple landmarks, some rocks or something out here, but for the most part it's just rolling grasslands, rolling prairie, you know, expanses of flowers and cactus and just all sorts of stuff. But there's so much wildlife out here. There's prairie dogs, pronghorn, the swift foxes that I'm looking for, and so much other wildlife and just so much beauty out here. So follow along with me over the next few days as I explore these vast expanses, as I weather the storms that are almost a daily occurrence out here, and as we hopefully find some wildlife to photograph. And so I set out into that vast open expanse of greenery. When visiting the prairie, I never quite know what to expect. It can feel overwhelming trying to find wildlife in such a large area. There's definitely lots of life out here. It's just spread out, and finding it can, at times, be difficult. I set out anyways, in search of swift foxes and whatever else I could find. My first day was filled with beautiful scenery, plenty of flowers, and ended with the clear, quiet evening. The American prairie is, for the most part, wide open land, largely undisturbed by human sign. But every once in a while, you'll stumble upon a windmill or an old fence marking someone's private property. That next morning, I came across one such fence, and on the other side, my first swift fox den on this trip. This den put me in a predicament. In front of me, on the other side of some barbed wire, in the middle of nowhere, a family of beautiful, tolerant swift foxes. The only issue was that they were on private property, and photographing them from my position left multiple wires visible in both photo and video. This left me with a decision to make. Do I respect the property owner's boundary and stay where I was? Or do I cross onto private property and get a better angle free of wires and fence posts? The chances of actually seeing the property owner was so slim anyways. Ultimately, the decision was a simple one to make, and I decided to do the right thing and respect the property boundary by staying on my side of the fence. I never did see the property owner, but felt very good with my decision. I spent most of the day around the fox den. It was a great opportunity to observe behavior and take notes in my wildlife journal. Eventually, the foxes retired to their subterranean home, and I entertained myself by photographing some prairie dogs. As the day came to a close, a storm rolled by off in the distance. Evening storms are almost a daily occurrence on the prairie, and have become one of my favorite parts of visiting this beautiful place. As the storm rolled by, I found a nice spot to camp for the night and enjoyed the call of some nighthawks as the last light disappeared. The next morning, I was awakened by birdsong. I set out once again onto the wide open prairie in search of another swift fox den. The foxes the day before were a joy to photograph, but I really wanted to find a den that wasn't on private property where I could move about freely and position myself to come away with the best images possible. Later that morning, after I had been on the trail for quite some time, I heard, off in the distance, some alarmed prairie dogs, and hoped that it might mean that there were some swift foxes in the area. I soon found the nervous prairie dogs and discovered the cause of their alarm. Not a swift fox, but an American badger. I watched from a distance for a few minutes as the badger went from hole to hole looking for young prairie dogs for its late breakfast. The badger was unsuccessful and soon gave up, disappearing into the open prairie. Badgers and prairie dogs are the true architects of this landscape. The holes they dig provide homes for other animals like the swift foxes, burrowing owls, and other mammals and reptiles. The badger was a fun sighting, and as I continued on, I began to hope that I would see some more on this trip and be able to photograph these charismatic members of the weasel family. Something about the prairie that I absolutely love is how frequently the conditions change out here. I'm not just talking about the weather. The weather changes a lot. It can be super bright and sunny and hot one moment, and then you can get these cold winds that come in and a lot of cloud cover, and then you get storms and rain and hail and just all sorts of stuff, and it's a lot of fun. But the conditions of the actual landscape can change. So, as far as you can see, it's grass right now. It's just a short grass prairie, and you can just be hiking along, and before you know it, you're in this long grass prairie, and then it switches to just cacti, as far as the eye can see, and then you've got flowers for miles, and it just changes. And so even though the landscape overall is similar or the same, just this rolling greenery, just these little variations in the landscape can change, and occasionally you get some outcropping of rocks or something like that, or these sections of more arid regions where everything seems to have just died and is having a hard time coming back. So you just get these little variations in the landscape and the weather and the wildlife from area to area. It's just really cool. Absolutely love it out here. I'm gonna get my hat back on. That sun is brutal, and keep going, see what we can find. The days are long out here, and you can go for miles without seeing anything, and then all of a sudden you reach certain areas in the prairie with all sorts of fun wildlife. As evening approached, I came upon one of these areas. Burrowing owls, prairie dogs, and pronghorn, and on a distant hillside, I noticed some more movement. As I came closer, I saw just what I hoped I would find, another swift fox den. Unlike the foxes I had found behind the fence the day before, these foxes appeared to be incredibly skittish, and so I stayed quite a distance away and got some video footage and even a couple of pictures of these beautiful canids. As I look for foxes out here, it's not just any den that I look for. I look for a den that is in a great spot for photos, but I'm also looking for foxes that are tolerant of my presence so I don't make the adults nervous during the stressful time of year as they raise their young kits. I quickly realized that this den, much like the first, didn't meet my checklist of requirements. The adults at this den were very nervous with my presence, so I backed off even further than I already was and spent the rest of the evening just observing these beautiful animals as the kits came out and played for a little bit. It was so peaceful sitting on the prairie with cacti and flowers all around me. Once again, an evening storm started to blow through in the distance, and the sounds of thunder and nighthawks filled the air as the last light dipped below the horizon. I moved off further from the den, looking for a convenient spot to set up my camp. I didn't want to stress the adults out throughout the night. As the last light disappeared, I happened to look up, and at the top of a nearby hill, to my astonishment, there was some more movement. The movement I saw were a few pairs of tiny ears, as some young swift foxes jumped and rolled around at the entrance of a third den. 3 dens in just a few days. I've never had such luck out here. I didn't see any adults and didn't want to surprise them, so I marked the location on my map as best as I could and moved off quite a ways from the third den, planning to return in the morning to hopefully photograph the beautiful swift foxes of the wide open prairie.